Hey, sweet dreamers. It's your boy, Zach, from The Jung and the Restless. I just wanted to let you know that as a new podcast, we're still in that phase where Apple Podcast reviews have a weirdly, disproportionately high impact on our success. So it would really mean the world to us if you would, give us 5 stars over there. And if you leave a dream in the review, we'll give you a shout out and take a stab at interpreting it on the show. I mean, even if you hate us, we'll read your hate mail on air if you leave it in the body of a 5-star review, and we'll still love you. Anyway, on with the show. Welcome to The Jung and the Restless. I'm Zach.
I'm Olivia.
And I'm Victor. And this is the podcast where your hands are so large you can't pet your cat, and that's so sad you're crying.
Now I lay me down to sleep. I dreamt I had a soul to keep, and if I die before I wake, will that dream just go on for its own sake?
I've been getting really into the joys of valerian root.
Oh,
You guys
yeah.
ever?
Long time ago, I was trying it out. And yeah, it's working for you?
Yeah, and it gives me real weird dreams.
Really?
Yeah, because I get kind of like, I don't know, it makes me feel kind of like fevery,
Oh.
like in a good way. Like it really knocks me out.
If I remember
If
right. Sorry, let me confirm that. If I remember right, if you take valerian root too regularly, it's associated with depression. So be careful.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think that's
I thought
why
that
I
was
stopped taking it.
I think that was melatonin.
Oh,
Or I
maybe
thought
that
was
is melatonin. Maybe I'm getting them switched. Yeah.
Because melatonin definitely like makes me super groggy.
Might be. Yeah, that might be it.
But also, I know that valerian root's not recommended for pregnant or nursing women.
Studies have indicated that valerian root is effective in treating anxiety and depression in menopausal women.
Okay.
So, make of that what you will.
I had an idea. I'm not going to give away the recipe because I still might try to like patent and sell this later on. But I had an idea for like an alcohol nightcap substitute. Like instead of drinking booze before bed to like, ease yourself to sleep, I made this like really strong valerian root concentrate. And I added some like sugar and like citrus and like, I won't give it kind of tastes like, what is it called? Absinthe.
Yeah.
It's got a real licoricey taste. Anyway, it's delicious and it knocks me out. And
There was something
every time
totally different recipe, but there was a similar kind of product that Olivia was buying for a while. For like going to sleep at night.
Oh, yeah, the neuro sleep.
Yeah.
It has valerian in it, I think.
Mm.
That shit knocks
right?
me out.
Every time I take it, I get real weird, like borderline lucid dreams. So this is a valerian root dream I had the other day. Okay, so the through line of the dream is I guess I was traveling with a large group, kind of like a field trip. Because I remember one of the first scenes in the dream was like an outdoor parking lot. And they're like buses or vans or something. And I remember I had a bunch of duffel bags, but I was stressing out because I didn't have clothes. I had like duffel bags inside duffel bags. And we had to hike to the vans. And this is up in the mountains. Like, it felt a lot like Estes Park in Colorado. Just like scenic snow-capped mountains. And like up in the mountains, there's all these like fanciful beasts, like
Cool.
giants and nothing like from classic mythology, like dragons. It was all like weirder than that. Like things that reminded me of like the flying dog thing from Neverending Story.
Hmm.
Is that Atreyu or is Atreyu the horse?
I don't remember.
Anyway, it was like that. And at one point I remember like telling somebody in the group that I could make some of those creatures appear or manipulate them. And I realized that like I was dreaming if I could do that. And then I can't remember the logic behind it, but I didn't want to lucid dream because I had been kind of having like, I don't know, I took this valerian root obviously because I wanted to get a good night's sleep. And a lot of times when I lucid dream, because I realize I'm dreaming, that means I like think of myself laying there in bed and I become hyper aware of the reality of that and I kind of drift back into it and I wake up. and I didn't want to wake up. So I was trying to like shed the idea that I was dreaming, like forget about it. And I remembered like one good way to do that is to like scare yourself. Because if you become legitimately scared, then, you know, it absorbs you back into the reality of the dream, you know? So I deliberately like tried to fly, but I did it with my ass pointed up. Like I laid down on the gravel of the parking lot and like did like a yoga pose, you know, with your feet in the air and tried to fly vertically into the air like that because I thought it would be scarier.
Ass first.
Yeah. And I made it become nighttime. And then I guess I got so like freaked out by it that I like compartmentalized it back into a third person thing. So then it became the scene that I was in where I'm flying in this parking lot at night in the mountains became a screen on a video game. And I was sitting on a couch with my ex watching it. This dream takes lots of turns like that. Like it just keeps shifting perspective. Anyway, so I'm sitting next to this ex. We'll call her Liz. And I'm actually even kind of explaining to her what's going on the screen about like why, like I'm explaining the reasoning behind her of why I wanted to fly like that. It's like I wanted to get scared so I could stay in the dream. And she's like super engaged and interested. And I'm telling her that like, I remember saying something about like I get scared of flying even in video games, which is what we were like apparently watching. We weren't playing the video game; it was on the screen. But she seemed like really amused by this. But then at a certain point, she told me there was this old man in her basement that kept coming up and trying to kill her.
Oh,
and this like really creepy old like gray beard man, and so I accompany her to the basement door, and sure enough he's standing at the top of the stairs, and I'm in like problem solving mode because I just figured out this whole like lucid dreaming problem, and I'm like, oh, you just push him. And she's like, what? And I just walk up and I just shove him on the chest down the stairs, and he tumbles backward down the stairs, and like I'm like 90% sure his neck is broken, so I'm like, there you go. and I remember like her mind being blown, like I never thought to just push him, and I was like, yeah, not that tough.
Problem solved.
And then oh God, I'm only like halfway through this. There's like, we're back with the group that's traveling together, like the field trip. And we have to go to sleep in this big auditorium. Like it's a hurricane or something, you know? And I'm sleeping on a sleeping bag or like a mat or something, a cot next to a friend of mine from high school that I haven't seen since high school. But he's just like antagonizing me, and like I'm dishing it back, and it's just escalating. It's like starts with little stuff, like he like bites me on the shoulder and he rips. I'm wearing a denim jacket, like my favorite denim jacket, and he rips the seam on the shoulder where there's like cotton showing through, and I get real mad about that. But eventually it escalates to the point where I kind of snap, and I just like twist his like arm around, and I think he's just doing like a soccer flop, you know, like acting like it hurts way more than it does.
Mm-mm.
And I'm like, whatever, dude. And I'm like so agitated with him that I just go to sleep on the other side of the auditorium. And he comes over like sobbing to show me what I did, and like his arm is broken, and there's two bones in the forearm.
Yeah,
one of them is sticking through the skin, and the other one's twisted around, so his hand is like on backwards.
Ooh.
And he needs my help to like reset it. So I'm like profusely apologizing, and I'm like twisting I wish I knew the names of bones.
Twisting
the one that's like still unbroken back around so that the two ends of the broken one can meet, and like resetting it and stuff. And I'm doing this, like we're both on our knees and I'm behind him and we're both naked. And like after the bones reset, like we're both crying, and I'm like holding him, and we start having sex. But it was like a weirdly beautiful image. It felt like a Renaissance painting, you know. It didn't feel very sexual because it was still like bloody, and like it felt like really like hyper masculine, like Greek.
We were reading about
statuesque thing.
Sex in the Dream Bible recently. It's like largely not sexual. A lot of the time is that it's just like about something you're enjoying.
Yeah, which is weird. We'll get into it, obviously.
Yeah.
And after this whole tableau, this whole thing, I end up going up to the roof of wherever we are, and it feels like it's like a rooftop bar. Again, it feels like Estes Park. Like we're in the mountains, and there's snow spotted evergreens everywhere, And so it feels like a rooftop, like tiki bar, but it's winter. So like everything's coated in snow and closed down. And I'm completely alone up there, except from the shadows behind the tiki bar comes the old man.
Oh.
And he's holding a syringe.
Oh, Jesus.
And he comes too quickly. And I'm like, shit, there's no stairs around to push him off or to push him down. but there's a ledge and we're up on like, I don't know, like the 20th floor. Some, there's this whole power struggle. And I eventually like get him to the edge, but it's not like the clean, like just shove him down the stairs, like one motion thing. It's like this drawn out struggle, right? Like push his torso over the edge and then like pin him down and like grab an ankle and then finally, flip him over using the leverage of the railing. And he tumbles to his death, but I realize that the syringe is sticking out of my neck and that he's gotten me. Mm. And the last thing I remember is looking out at the mountains and there's no more fanciful beasts. It's just like desolate and quiet. Mm. And I don't know what's in the syringe and I don't know if I'm going to live or not.
That's a
fucking journey.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah.
I feel like
that was a long one.
There were acts.
Yeah.
And each time I moved into a new part, I was like, do I really need to, like it did come back around. So I was like, yeah, it's all part of the same thing.
I have a place where I think we might want to start. And because this is so like in depth, I don't know that we can like start without the Dream Bible to give us a place. But I was
thinking, yeah, that might be the most coherent way to go about it is make a list of like pertinent imagery that the Dream Bible would have.
So I was taking notes, but I think that old man is important because men represent aspects of yourself or areas of your life that are assertive, aggressive, rational, practical, or insensitive. And so like there's nothing for old men, but so maybe we look up old and apply that to him because he's a recurring character there.
Yeah, and if it has to do with like aspects of yourself, I assume especially if you are a man. Well, maybe not even if, animus, I guess we all have both. Maybe then just advanced age indicates like what you think of your future self or
maybe
like your trajectory.
Yeah, I'll look it up real quick.
For some reason, I also thought clothes were important because I was stressed out about the duffel bags just being full of other duffel bags. And then what really set me off about my friend there was him like tearing my jacket.
Elderly. To dream of elderly people represents experience or the wisdom to know better. Having been there and done that, re-experiencing a similar situation. Sound advice coming from experience. It may also reflect boredom with something you know too well. Old women may reflect experience with supporting others or being screwed over. Old men may reflect experience asserting yourself or embarrassing others.
Interesting. So they do have an old man entry.
Yeah, it's under elderly. It's interesting too because he was fucking aggressive as fuck.
Yeah. But it's weird that he was haunting my ex in a kind of passive in the shadows way. And then once I affronted him, then he...
So, and also old men or men represents aspects of yourself. So like an older, wiser, aggressive version of yourself is haunting your ex. I don't know.
And then under the old entry, old objects or people in a dream may also reflect your feelings about wiser choices or ideas. Negatively, it may reflect success or winning that it is achieved through more boring experienced methods or choices. So like succeeding by taking like a tried and true route that you find uninteresting or whatever.
That's interesting that's like under the negative interpretation.
That makes sense to me. It's like, oh yeah, I could do this thing and I would make money doing it, but that would be my life.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's the negative of
old objects or people in the old entry.
I also looked up fantasy. To dream of because of the fantasy character, like the creatures, beasts. And they were there at the very beginning and then they were gone at the end.
I think this is a J.K. Rowling dream. That Fantastic Beasts.
To dream of a fantasy represents feelings of enjoying escaping from reality. a reflection of being in a highly imaginative state in waking life, thinking that is unrealistic, sexual fantasies, imagining what is possible or achievable. Negatively, dreaming of a fantasy may represent a tendency towards feeling disconnected from reality, escapism, playing with something that isn't real and never thinking it matters. Difficulty coming back to reality after being isolated. Awareness of yourself becoming realistic after not being realistic. Unrealistic thoughts about sexual attraction to the opposite sex.
So you've got the beasts there at the beginning of the dream, and they're fun, and you're kind of interacting with them, and you almost go off the lucid path of like controlling the beasts, right? And playing with them like they're toys or something like that. Am I getting that right?
That really does feel right with this fantasy entry.
And then by the end of the dream, the beasts are gone, and it's like a desolate landscape that you're dealing with. So it sounds like if the dreams are representative, or if the beasts are representative of like fanciful ideas or whimsy, it's like maybe your arc from start to finish is like you start in like a more, imaginative place, and like reality is caught up with you by the end of the dream. I'm not sure really how to fill in the middle there, but that's maybe your start to finish place.
That parallels the arc with the old man too, because the feeling of him coming out of the shadows with the syringe was definitely like I fucked myself on this one feeling. Like if I hadn't pushed him down the stairs, he wouldn't be seeking.
It was like a revenge thing. Okay,
gotcha.
Yeah, like he was apparently always in the basement at my ex's place. Like she was complaining about him lurking, but he never like was aggressive to her until I thought I was like helping her out. I was like, oh, let me just kill him for you. And then he followed me.
So there is a Dream Bible entry for a syringe. To dream of a syringe represents influence or emotional immunizing, a person or situation that has the power to influence your choices, beliefs, or feelings. Positive or responsible changes that bring out positive change. Changes made that immunize you from problems, blame, or anxiety. Negatively, a syringe may reflect unwanted influences. Responsible or positive changes that scare you. Feelings about parents or authority figures forcing change on you. Alternatively, a syringe may negatively reflect bad influences or exploiting people's weaknesses to change their minds. Actions taken to immunize yourself from blame or responsibility.
A lot in there.
So
but it does
there's
seem
still more,
significant.
actually.
Oh, wow.
To dream of syringe injections that don't work may reflect ineffective attempts to change your life.
Scary thing was I didn't know what was in it or if it would work.
To be injected with a syringe represents a person or situation that is influencing your choices, beliefs, or feelings. Feelings that a change being made reverses or alters your thinking style. Feelings spared from difficulties or that your life has been made easier in some ways. Feeling immunized from your troubles. To dream of being... Okay, wait. Do you remember what the fluid looked like? Was it clear?
No, it was like a bluish greenish, like
okay.
Is that in there?
antifreeze kind of color.
Hang on, let's see.
We could also separately look at the colors.
I would do that. Because it says
blue is positive stuff, right? We were just talking about that.
Oh yeah, so there's only something in here with a clear fluid.
But I remember having the feeling that it was like engine coolant. Like it wasn't.
Okay.
Like I had the feeling it was
like not medicine.
No, yeah, like he was trying to do something bad.
Well, so okay.
He was trying to negatively influence you.
So just to kind of piece this stuff back together, you've got an old man. Elderly people represent experience or wisdom that knows better, having been there, done that. Like so wisdom, experience. Old men may reflect experience asserting yourself or embarrassing others. I'm not sure that plays in here. And then the elderly or old people negatively reflect success or winning that's achieved through more boring experiences or methods. So it sounds like maybe the old man could reflect, if we take the seed of like the beasts being impracticality or like, fantasy or imagination or like whatever at the beginning, and then you're hit with like the absence of that, which is like cold practicality at the end. The old man might be like someone trying to tell you they know better, and that the thing at the end of the dream is like all there ever should have been or ever was. And so then the syringe is like those ideas being forced upon you, or like that perspective being,
Yeah.
Can we something about like, so men are supposedly representative of an aspect of yourself that is assertive or dominant or something. But so like if we take that into consideration, that's perhaps an aspect of yourself that is older and wiser, or that knows better, that is assertive and trying to influence you.
So it might be like, I don't know if I'm just constructing meaning, but it's possible there's like some anxiety of like knowing in your practical head that, a certain path or certain choice or whatever might be better in the long term, and something in you like fighting against that.
Yeah, and it's interesting in the context of that ex too,
Mhm.
that particular person, because it was a pretty short relationship, but it's probably the one I'm most embarrassed about. Like looking back on it, I just am not proud at all of the way I handled it.
Sure.
And like I thought she was super cool and like really valued her opinion, and so like in retrospect, that one in particular makes me cringe more than any other. And like I just, at the time, this was years ago, I had some like kind of toxic relationship patterns that she really highlighted, because she was probably the first person I dated that was really mature and like, not that everyone I dated before that wasn't mature, but she was like really specifically mature and privy to these types of things. Like I think she had just dealt with more bullshit and was more done with it. And people before her were, willing to fix me or whatever, you know what I mean? But it was so short because she was like, no, you need to deal with this before we can be a thing. And so it's interesting that like I would push this old man down her stairs and like try to rid her of him, and now he's following me. So like the feeling I'm starting to get like talking about this is that maybe I'm processing, like I'm done being, I mean, I haven't seen her in years, but like I was embarrassed about these parts of me that like look bad in front of her. And now I like, it's not her problem anymore. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
I also just had another thought of like, she brought to your attention the older, wiser version of you that maybe is going to make smarter choices or whatever.
And you killed him.
And you were like, just push him down the stairs.
Yeah. Put him back in the basement where he belongs, back in my subconscious.
He seemed so evil.
Right.
Like, he seemed so menacing.
Well, because maybe it's like the work you have to do to get to there is like, it's a lot and intimidating or whatever. But for whatever reason, it was like, you didn't want to get to that. And then,
shit. So it is like actually the basement. I'm pushing him into the basement.
You pushed him into the basement.
Your subconscious.
And then here's the thing. Something I heard in therapy is that you can't hold a beach ball underwater forever or whatever. You push him down the stairs and you're like, problem solved. And then, inevitably he comes back for you and is trying to influence you with his older and wiser injections. But it's interesting that it's still like frightening and dangerous seeming at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be that. Sorry, go ahead.
You're right that the presence and then absence of the, like, I looked up beast on the Dream Bible because I actually used that word in the dream. And I think it parallels the fantasy one, but it's short and specific. To dream of a beast represents a negative aspect of your life that seems totally out of control. Problem, you have a lot of difficulty taming or getting under control. So like kind of the way we colloquially use the word demon, So they're, in addition to just being like, at the beginning, I'm living in like a quote unquote fantasy world, and at the end it's more realistic, it could also be a reference to demons or bad habits that aren't in control, that are like, maybe the desolation is a good thing.
Yeah, or like you might be, let's say the beasts are unhealthy on some level. Ultimately, you're still enjoying them and still appreciating their presence, and to lose them, you may feel desolate, right? There's a reason you still hold on to those things, and it's because you're getting something out of them, right? And so, like, if the old man represents maybe a version of yourself that's put those things behind you, the reason why the old man is scary is because the hillside without the fantastical creatures is desolate.
Just
it
a
feels
hillside, yeah.
empty. If they're not there, what is there? Nothing.
Right.
Which is interesting, because as like a hopeless romantic artsy type, like I do, or historically have had a tendency to romanticize and like glorify like toxic behavior and toxic traits, which Liz was very not about.
Right. So yeah, she might be like, I think these themes, these like abstract concepts are the big picture of maybe what's going on in the stream. And then Liz, it sounds like, she might be like the key to what specifically you're
like
dwelling
like
on.
a turning point.
Or like if there were specific things that came up in that relationship, or that you said you feel like the most cringe when you think back on that relationship of all of them, whatever that cringing is, whatever that's based in, that could be kind of the like core of the dream, is you trying to work out whatever that is.
Yeah.
I know that we like probably all already know what a basement is, but like the entry is like,
I know what it is.
yeah, well, the entry is pretty interesting in relation to what we're just talking about now. So, to dream of a basement represents your deepest, darkest thoughts, emotions, and memories. A basement points to problems that you don't want to deal with, or issues that may be very uncomfortable thinking about. A situation or memory that is so negative you can't forget it or think about anything else. Alternatively, a basement may reflect the worsening of a problem or a trouble that you are overwhelmed by. A basement is a sign that you may have unresolved issues or problems that the ego may not allow you to explore without assistance. Oh, that sounds like
Snap.
problems the ego may not allow you to explore without assistance. Is this Dream Bible telling you to get a therapist?
Probably. I feel the impulse to like be specific, because I'm talking like vaguely about, you know, toxic behaviors and relationship patterns, and I actually don't want the listener to like fill in the blank there and like make up things about me.
Okay.
Because it's very common, like young dude stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like jealousy, possessiveness,
Right.
that kind of stuff that you kind of like.
He didn't kick her dog, is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't anything like beyond the pale.
But
it's like it's embarrassing when you become an older, more mature man, and then less hormonal, you know. But yeah, jealousy, I was drinking a lot at the time, like kind of like toxically masculine traits.
Which is interesting because of the old man. Like
that's
the
what I was
man
getting
represents like the classic overly masculine assertiveness, like, but like as an aspect of yourself, which Zach, you are like not, in my opinion, like an overly like masculine assertive person. You know, I feel like you have like a nice feminine energy, and I mean that in the best way possible.
No, I know what you mean, but it still comes off funny.
Side note, when I did I looked up your birth chart, and there was like there's this thing at the bottom where it's like how many like feminine aspects to masculine aspects you have, and like I had like 4 masculine, 6 feminine. Victor, you had like 5 and 5,
yeah,
and
it was
then
50-50.
Zach,
Balanced boy.
you had 9 feminine and 1 masculine.
Oh shit! I don't mean like, oh shit, that's bad. I mean like, oh shit, that's interesting.
Yeah, no, it was interesting, but like it's interesting that's like.
But I still grew up a man and was, you know, at an earlier time, at a younger age, had was carrying around a lot of that.
Right. And that's a
Cultural
product of our,
bullshit.
yeah, exactly. That's a product of like the society that we live in. And it's like, it's inescapable in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, nobody rolls into adulthood like a perfectly well-adjusted person that doesn't have anything they need to sort through. Like we've all like had to grapple with our own stuff, and it's a continuous process, right? Like all of us are still working on stuff. So, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think the like toxic masculinity thing is like coming together for me with the old man, but also the beasts / demons. I mean, they didn't feel like demons. They felt like fun beasts. But again, that's like, I'm also reading Naked Lunch right now.
Oh.
And like Burroughs is like the king of like romanticizing this kind of genre of like bad behavior.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple dream topics or a couple things that came up that we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah.
So can you refresh my memory? There was like, after the first old man experience, then you get dropped back into you said clothes were important, and there was a friend that broke his arm. You tried to help him repair it, and then you had sex.
His arm.
You broke his arm, and then you were trying to help him, and then that turned into you two.
Yeah, this is actually a good transition because I think I feel like it ties into the overly aggressive masculine thing. I mean, first of all, there's homosexual intercourse. That's very masculine, and then there's a lot of violence in this dream, and in this part it happened to be like it was like little growing violences like slapping and biting that eventually escalated to me breaking his arm. I didn't mean to. I was trying to like do it like an older brother kind of like arm bar like wrestling move thing, like just twist his arm. And I didn't realize it was broken until he came like over to me to show me what I had done.
Is this?
And then
sorry.
No, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna ask what your relationship with this person is in real life, like what, because I feel like that'll inform us a little more. Yeah,
it's weird that it would be him because I haven't seen him since high school. We were buddies in high school.
Okay.
And it was a little bit of an antagonistic relationship. We both had a sense of humor that lent itself to like tormenting each other. We would play pranks on each other. And
is this the guy that you had a joke about pissing during sex?
Yeah, that's just what I was wondering.
What?
There was you told us a story about a guy who like you would make fun of him for something all the time, and he would make fun of you being like a necrophile or something, and then he came to you after and he was like, "So I gotta tell you, the thing you've been teasing me about all these years, I'm really into that. Like that's actually my kink." And then you had to be like, "Okay, so just so you know, I'm not really into fucking dead bodies."
No, different friend, but same group of friends.
Okay, gotcha.
What did you say about clothes? You were saying something about clothes being important.
It just seemed like a thing throughout the whole dream. Like I was stressed at the beginning of this field trip or whatever it was. That's what it had the energy of a field trip. I was stressed about not having clothes or like packing. I remember at one point my duffel bag just had another duffel bag in it, but anyway, yeah. And then like in this scene where we're in the like gymnasium to sleep, he like bit the shoulder of my jacket and like ripped it, and that was the inciting incident for me breaking his fucking arm. I don't know if clothes are actually important. It's just like maybe
what is like the main
arbitrary theme?
Like what's like the overall like the first thing in there about clothes?
The first thing about clothes is to dream of clothing represents the personality. Consider the style, value, and color of the clothing for additional meaning. But further down the entry, to dream of being unable to find your clothes for an important occasion may represent feelings of being unable to meet the obligations, demands, or expectations of others.
That's super interesting, and like that.
Yeah, that feels relevant.
That kind of plays into like if it represents your personality, it's like how you're perceived, how other people see you. So like not being able to meet their expectations, or
then it's interesting that this would end in a sex scene because that is very distinctly involved having no clothes. And that part of it, by the way, was probably the most like that's the part that I was thinking about on the way to work. That was the most like complicated part emotionally.
The sex part of the dream?
Yeah, me breaking his arm, having to fix it, like the part where I'm like resetting his bone was really graphic.
There's also like in the arm entry, like there isn't a broken arm entry, which we could probably like make one. It's pretty breaking somebody's ability to function. Like your arms represent function, reach, or what's possible.
Yeah.
Well, so let me read two things to you. Sorry, did you want to go?
Oh, well, I was going to say, if you want to read it here, that there's the entry about people who self-harm is kind of interesting in relation to this. It's not spot on, but it's like, it's interesting that you broke your friend's arm. And it says people who self-harm to their arms may see imagery in dreams of damage being done to their arms by safe or trusted friends.
People who self-harm?
Yeah.
So if you are someone that self-harms, you might dream of friends.
Yeah. I never have.
Well, it was your friend's arm so what I'm saying here is that your friend is in the position that like some people might dream from about self-harm.
My first instinct is like tie it into the old man arc with the overly aggressive, like hyper masculine traits in relationships. This like, first of all, this like extreme reaction to like a mild annoyance where I like accidentally go too far and like really cause bodily harm to somebody is hyper aggressive. And then in the aftermath of that, I'm like profusely remorseful. And I feel like that morphing into like a sex scene is very layered and hard to summarize. But
I'm going to read a couple relevant entries because I think that might help. Okay. Arms. To dream of an arm represents function, reach, or what's possible. Arms reflect status, talents, grasp, or resources that are available to you or some aspect of yourself. To dream of broken bones in a person's body represents changes to fundamental aspects of your personality and to who you are. And then to dream of having sex with a person who has something wrong with them may represent your enjoyment of being needed. You may also be enjoying the role of being more desirable, important, or interesting than someone else.
yeah, I wonder if topping versus bottoming means anything.
Yeah. Let me scan this for... Were you topping or bottoming?
I was topping.
Okay.
Because it started like I was resetting. I was like that scene from Ghost, the pottery scene. You know, like reaching around him to reset the bone. So I'm like behind him. But it, like,
the old reach around. All right.
But yeah, but it's like it's really tender and like upsetting. Like there's blood everywhere, and I'm like having to twist a bone back into place.
Yeah.
And then that turns into me just like holding him there to like comfort him because he's like sobbing. It's like really like kind of a fucked up scene.
Yeah.
And then that's when I realized that we're naked and I'm inside of him.
So we've got...
But again, it was like kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
Like not
I hear
super
you.
sexual. I didn't feel turned on like per se.
I just have a vivid like imagination. I'm just like picturing this and it's just kind of funny.
So we've got clothing or the like inability to find clothing representing maybe a feeling of inadequacy. We've got arms representing capability, right? Status, talents, grasp, resources available to you, function, reach. So arms are like power, right? And then you've got the broken bone is fundamental change to who you are, which I think maybe resonates with what we've been talking about with the old man, right? Of like the old man and like the going from beasts to desolation, right? That represents maybe a fear of a fundamental change to who you are, right? Going from the you are to a version of yourself that's maybe more responsible or whatever, but is also not someone that you feel you would like or like being, right? And so that broken arm, that broken bone is the change. The clothes are feelings of inadequacy. And then the arm is power, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe on some level, it's this all feels like it connects to the idea of you have to fundamentally change yourself to go from to resolve your like a feeling of inadequacy. Like there's a way in which I don't feel I have enough power or strength or whatever I need to like an ambition thing. But to get there, you have to fundamentally change in a way that you feel would be desolation.
Yeah, and the feeling I'm getting from talking about this dream is that fundamental change maybe has to do with like making amends for stuff.
Mm.
Because this between Liz and this friend, like it seems to have a lot to do with like stuff I've maybe inflicted or feel like I have.
Do you have like beef with this friend?
No, not at all.
Okay.
But breaking the arm in the dream, it's like
It's new beef.
I took it too far,
Yeah.
right? Like we were doing a tit for tat thing, and then I crossed a line, and now I'm trying to make it up to this guy.
Yeah, because I was like so torn up, extremely remorseful about what I did on accident there,
Mm-hmm.
which seems very parallel to the way I acted around Liz.
It says in the
That-
sex entry, whatever thoughts, feelings, or memories that stand out the most to you about the person you have sex with represents what you are experiencing more of in your life.
Mm.
So if this guy, sounds like you haven't talked in a long time, but if you could like sum up your feelings about this person, what would you say?
I don't know. I haven't seen him in so long.
Hmm.
It's probably based on your feelings about him in high school. Like,
Yeah, or what those feelings represent overall.
yeah.
Right. Like, was this an
'Cause
easy friendship? Was this a complicated friendship? Was this someone you like?
It seemed pretty straightforward, but I have wondered in the past, like, if how much of like his retaliation in our little like prank wars did come from a place of like genuine agitation, and like I do wonder if I ever like took it too far. Like I thought I was just having fun, and he was actually like felt bullied by me.
Mm.
Well, that's the dream, isn't it? Right? Or like that's that part of that tit for tat. You breaking his arm is you taking things too far, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean that seems like kind of a perfect one-to-one connection between that feeling that you have of like, was I ever really being an asshole to this guy? Like, did he come away from that feeling negatively about me? And in your dream, it's like,
And what's interesting is you didn't like know until like after the fact. Like he came back to you and was like, "Oh, you actually broke my arm when you did that thing you did a while ago.
right.
Broke my arm." Like, and so it's like it's almost like you're imagining like,
Yeah, and he needed me to help him reset it. Like this was an auditorium full of people.
oh, there's also
By the-
sex in a public place. I didn't
Oh.
realize you were in an auditorium full of people.
Yeah, they were all asleep though. But it did feel like especially vulnerable to be.
That's so funny that they're all asleep. Wait,
To be
was this
having,
like the field trip still?
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
but
gotcha.
it felt like we were all sleeping in an auditorium or a gymnasium like you would during a hurricane.
Gotcha. That's right. Okay.
So to dream of having sex with someone in public may represent your private life being made public or other people speculating about your life. It may also reflect attention you are attracting yourself with your personal interests or achievements, which speaks to you're concerned about how this guy is perceiving you. You have an anxiety about how you behaved in that relationship with your ex, right? And that's about people's perception of you. And so like public sex having to do with like consciousness of being perceived maybe plays into like, part of this for you is thinking about how other people see you.
Yeah, because that's the last part of like a genuine metamorphosis, right? Is the like if you change for the better completely within a vacuum, I guess good for you, but like it doesn't really feel validated necessarily.
Yeah.
Especially if you feel like you have something to make up for. Yeah, at some point we're going to do like a whole episode on like sex dreams because I feel like there's a lot. Maybe not. Maybe it's like as simple as poop dreams turned out to be.
I think
It's a long entry.
I think but you're right. It is long and it just depends on all of the other context, but.
And it is interesting because like I didn't want to make like a joke out of the gay sex thing or like come off as like resistant to the idea that it might be about repression or something. Because first of all, I am like, I don't think anyone's like perfectly straight, but I don't feel repressed in that way. Like I do, maybe like whatever percent bisexual, but I don't have a hard time accepting that. I'm totally, I'm 9-to-1 feminine, guys. Like I don't feel, I think when sexuality in a dream comes up, that's not the sexuality you identify
right.
with.
Yes.
The first thing you might reach for is like repression or like something like a true desire coming out, but like
I understand. I totally hear you because like, and I've had sex dreams before where it's like, I can tell, like, if I tell you that I had a sex dream about this, like, that's gonna come off like a certain way, but sex dreams just usually are not about, they don't feel like they're about sex, you know? They're not about that, so.
Sometimes, like when, like during puberty, when I had like a nocturnal emission, I think that was just me having an orgasm in my sleep and my brain putting some fun imagery to it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, in adulthood, I feel like sex dreams are almost never about sex.
Yeah. Especially this one. This does not seem like it's about sex at all.
It wasn't very sexy. We're both crying.
Yeah,
and he's
that's why I keep
all
laughing, by the way, is like just picturing you like doing this very unsexy, like kind of horrifyingly gory, like resetting of this broken bones and then being like, oh wait, we're fucking.
Yeah. And if it were about me wanting to have gay sex with this friend, I would just say that. I wouldn't be like ashamed of it.
Yeah.
So there is an entry on that, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's not relevant.
I'm not seeing a lot that's relevant. It's getting into like a little bit problematic here.
Yeah,
it's Dream Bible.
Dream means you're a homo.
Should I read the parenthetically gay sex entry on the Dream Bible? Should we get into that?
I mean, we can cut it out if we want,
pertinent.
but we don't need to. Up to you, Zach.
If
it feels like it wasn't about the fact that you were the same.
It didn't feel gendered.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Then let's skip it.
I do have like an example of an old sex dream, real quick, because I feel like it's a good example of what sex dreams are about a lot of the time. I had a dream that I had sex with my supervisor at work in a bathroom at work. It was during a period of time when she was my direct supervisor and saw everything I did, and she was very on my side. Like, she knew how hard I was working and was she had to fight to promote me because the rest of management who didn't have an eye on me thought I was fucking around. And I felt like she was my only ally at work. And so I never thought of her like in a sexual way. So I think that like dream is a good example of like processing that like connection that we had at work, where I felt like she's the only one on my side. It felt like kind of intimate in a different way, but like, you know what I mean? That's not really about sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big picture, like no other detail, entry for sex in the Dream Bible is to dream about sex represents positive or pleasurable experience that you're having in waking life. Whomever you have sex with represents a quality you're noticing in yourself or a situation that you're enjoying. So it's literally just like something you're getting a positive experience out of in life.
Yeah. So I think the hard part about this dream is like, well, other than how winding and long it is just, I feel like it's trying to tell me something. So I'm like, it's not going to hit on something that already happened or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to like in this moment process a revelation that it hasn't like fully happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the basement entry saying.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think we need to get to the thing. It's not like you need to like jump out of your seat and be like, Eureka, I know I'm a different person now, but
have
like
the epiphany now, but that definitely doesn't seem what it's about. Like the phrase that I'm getting in my head is, I forget where I got this, probably therapy, but an apology without what is it? An apology without action is just manipulation or something like that. That's like what this conversation is making me think about, because I think that's like the theme is I'm going through a period of trying to be less self-centered and trying to figure out like, I don't know how to phrase it.
Yeah. It sounds like the overarching sense I get from this is that something you maybe are thinking about, or you like that's crossing your mind occasionally, is like the need to like do some self work, right? Or like like on some level feeling like I'm gonna have to stop doing this eventually, or I'm going to need to start doing this eventually, with like a heavy sigh and like a knowledge that it's gonna be a pain to change.
Especially for an introvert, because I think the distinction here, because I feel like I've been doing self-work for a long time, but I think the key difference here has to do with like genuinely applied to others' self-work. because like I was saying earlier about changing in a vacuum, like that's great, you're different, but like no one, like what does it mean if you're not like being a part of things and like applying the work that you've done to actually, when I think back to that relationship with Liz, like I feel like I learned a hard lesson at the time when she dumped me, and I was like, okay, here are XYZ things I need to work on, and then I did, but it was only to not go through that thing again of embarrassing myself and getting dumped. Like I think now I'm processing getting better in those regards for the sake of being a good person and treating other people better, and potentially making amends with some people I may have hurt.
It sounds
Does
like
that make sense?
It does.
It does, and it sounds like what you're describing is being somewhere in the process, like whether it's like you've done 90% of the work, you know, like, but you're not like fully through that process. And like one thing that I learned in therapy that I like to apply to everything is
I love that we can't talk about therapy without mocking ourselves for it. What a healthy generation.
Yeah.
Do you know about the consciousness continuum? Have I ever told you about the consciousness continuum?
No.
So I find this like really helpful for like anything you're learning, anything you're working on.
We talk about this all the time. Comes up all the time.
It like totally, it helps me understand where I'm at with something and where other people are at with something, anything. But so the idea is that, when there's a thing that you're going to need to eventually work on and fix for yourself or change, or just learn, like a skill that you're going to learn, you start in a place of unconscious incompetence, meaning that you are not aware of the fact that you're incompetent at this thing. And then
I do know what you're talking about. I
Right.
think I've seen a graph or something.
Yeah, I think I probably drew it for you at some point. I'm just going to finish this for the listeners.
Please do.
But so the second stage is conscious incompetence, and that is just that you have been made aware of this thing that you're incompetent at. So like somebody pointed out to you, Liz points out to Zach, like, you're doing this thing that's toxic and I don't like it and I'm not going to stick around for it. And I don't know, that probably wasn't the first time that you were made aware of it. You were probably already there, but like maybe that's the first time you're like, oh shit, that's
the first time anyone was that direct about it.
Or just like, yeah, anyway, like it's the first time that you're made aware of a thing that you need to work on. But the conscious incompetence phase is that you are aware of the problem and you still are operating the same way. Like you don't know how to change. You don't know how to do it differently. The next step is conscious competence, where it's like you've gotten to the place where you can put a lot of effort into doing it differently, but it takes conscious effort. It takes like thinking about it, and it's like it's not easy, you know. And then the last place is the unconscious competence phase, where it's like you don't even think about it. It's like behind you. You've fully gone through the process of changing this thing or learning this skill, and you're doing it differently. And like I don't know if this directly applies to what you're talking about, but it sounds like this thing that is still like hanging over you is maybe like you're not fully through to unconscious competence because you're still consciously thinking about it on some level. Like it's still a thing that is like you're thinking about and concerned with.
Yeah, I think that is relevant, and because I think it has to do with like I have done all this self work. I feel like I'm sure there's like a lot more to go, but part of the feeling right now is like, well, I've done all this work. I've changed a bunch. Why don't I feel better? And it's like, well, because I think maybe I still feel like I'm standing in my own way. I haven't yet learned how to apply these changes and this betterment to real life scenarios.
And the old man was like in your way, in your dream, right?
Yeah, well, he was in Liz's way at first. He's like blocking the basement.
Right. And he's
pushed him
you.
down the stairs.
If he's you, he was in her way.
Yeah.
And
So I got him out of her life.
Yeah.
But he is me. So wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And then the super hot middle part, I guess feels like the same concept, just kind of applied to a deeper, less specific history, that less to do with romantic relationships and more to do with like people in general.
Yeah.
So again, this wasn't like my best friend, or even somebody I've thought about in a long time. It might be like my brain's like best representative for like just someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a human being.
It sounds like someone that you have like a little bit of anxiety about how you're perceived by that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you were saying about like feeling like you've made these changes, but they haven't been actualized, remind me of this thing that I heard one time, probably like an Alan Watts thing, but like
Actualize is a good word for it. Yeah.
But I remember like introverted, introspective people, I think this especially applies to, but sometimes when you're in your own head, you can kind of think of yourself as like, oh, I'm this node, and there's a separation between me and everything else, and like I have to reach out and connect with other things that are, you know, outside of myself, right? That you know, you exist in a little bubble of consciousness separate from all the other little bubbles of consciousness. But there's another way to think about what it is to be an individual, or to be a person, which is, instead of being a node, you are an intersection point of all of these other people and experiences and things happening around you. Because if you take everything outside of yourself away, there is nothing, right? So what we are is kind of where all of these things that are not us meet, right? And so like for you, it's like you feel like you've made these changes, but they haven't made their way out into the real world yet. You haven't become the person that has changed because, you know, like you said, I think you haven't dated for a while, or like maybe you're not making new connections in the same way that you did in high school or whatever. And yeah, even though you're doing all this work inside yourself, you aren't real until you're you know, being of service to others, or, you know, being your best self with people, instead of just thinking about what you would do in certain situations.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. That is, because I feel like that's where the blockage is between the interior self and the outside world. Like, I'm trying to think of an example, but I feel like on a pretty regular basis, I still have opportunities to like take different micro paths than I have in the past, and still don't, for whatever reason. But I think one reason may be like, yeah, that introversion, where it's like this, I could do this little thing that like advances me forward in the realm of like the community at large, you know what I mean? But like people are exhausting, so I'm just gonna kind of shut my mouth and like slowly back away.
Mm-hmm.
That was really vague because I couldn't think of an example, but I can't think of an example because I think it happens on these micro levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a thing that I kind of wrestle with as like an introverted person is like, I feel like I've grown in a way where I've come to a place where it's like, I can really appreciate that people are the most important thing. And, you know, having relationships with other people is like really the purpose of being alive. And yet still am like anxious and exhausted by people. I don't really want to meet anybody else. And I don't really want to make a new connection. So it's like, oh, I can see like where happiness comes from and what the point of everything is, but it doesn't change that I'm still someone that doesn't like to engage with it a lot of the time, you know?
Yeah. I feel compelled to tie it to Olivia's dream, but I don't want to like reveal anything that we touched on when we were off the air.
Well,
But
how about you do it, and if we need to cut it,
Sure.
it just won't be there for you guys.
Yeah.
Because I can tie it to the broad level of what we were talking about with your dream.
Yeah.
But like, as you move through life, certain things don't serve you anymore.
Mhm.
And hopefully a lot of times those just shed away. But your dream was a little bit about like working to keep some of those things around.
Yeah, totally. And like
And-
finding other things that actually do serve me, and, you know, choosing to put more energy into that instead.
Yeah. And I feel like I have this problem where I let a lot of those things shed away. And that is good when those things don't serve you, but maybe I've let a lot more fall by the wayside and haven't made more going forward. So it's just kind of closing in on itself and becoming more and more isolated. Because, you know, when I talk about like toxic things from the like behaviors and patterns, a lot of people that I know now that I'm close to be like, I can't picture you acting like that, Zach. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're still friends. You know what I mean? Like I don't think I've done a lot of work to fix things other than myself.
Mm.
And so the things that are naturally going to still orbit me, by virtue of just simply doing that, are still there, but there's nothing new. Anything that was broken is either demolished or is still broken.
I do think, sometimes there is value in going back and trying to make amends for things, but sometimes you're doing more damage doing that, or like if it's coming from a self-serving place, like sometimes like the apology isn't about that person. Sometimes the apology is about you and trying to prove to yourself that you've grown or changed or are better or whatever, and you're looking for some kind of validation from somebody of like, actually you're a good person now. I don't think bad things about you anymore, and it's
That's
like,
the thing is
that's
like,
why better to just move on, just roll on, try and do things right the next time around with.
I agree. And I also think like it doesn't hurt to do it usually but like you have to be good with like, if that person says, no, fuck you, and you really hurt me and I don't fucking ever want to hear from you again, is that going to ruin you? Is that going to hurt more? Because if that's it, then you weren't doing it for the right reasons.
But Liz is an interesting vehicle for this, because it's, if I called her now and like, even if I could definitively prove that I'm different, it wouldn't matter. Like, it doesn't change anything.
Well, I think like if you were doing that because you felt like you had left her with a wound that you could help heal, then that would be the right reason to do it. If you're doing it because you're like trying to suck her into your own like hero's journey where you're the protagonist and she's like, like early character development, and now your arc is that you are, like fixing things with this person, leave her alone, like, because it's not, she's going to feel that, and it's just going to be more burden that you're piling on top of that person.
Yeah, which is why the old man came back for just me when I was alone.
Yeah.
Because it never was her problem.
Yeah.
It's a good dream, Zach.
Yeah, it's kind of more nebulous than I was hoping to like clip onto like one specific like.
That's
meaning.
okay. There was a lot of meaning in there. It's like not all of them are going to be neatly packaged like psychoanalyses. I think that we're all a little more complex than that. Like I have dreams like this all the time. I usually don't bring them here because I'm worried but I might start doing that because I feel like, or like because I'm worried that we're gonna like circle around things for a long time and just like not get anywhere. But like, I don't know that I
where I felt like this was going for a minute, but
I liked this. Like I feel like there are things that tie together. It's not like, I don't think it always has to be like a we cracked it kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, the dream it felt completely disjointed when I was telling it, and now it does feel like it's all about one thing. Which, to try to like land the plane, it's like the idea of growing up and maturing and changing for the better. What does Jung call it? I'm trying to tie this into the name of the podcast by using some Jung terminology. Individuating. It's about individuating, and the membrane through which you have to cross to actually have to actually make that complete, I guess, in terms of like your relationship to reality.
Yeah.
As opposed to just sorting it out in your head and kind of like living in the cocoon forever.
Yeah, I feel like with both of your dreams, they felt like at first glance on the surface level really random. And like your brain's just churning out whatever silly thing it thinks of, a scene at a time. And yet when we dig into them with like these tools, it's really interesting how it can like come together as a coherent story. I still don't know what I believe about like whether we're just projecting meaning onto clouds with this, or if our brains really are like, constructing these like clever ways to try and guide us.
Yeah, I can't help but think that we're processing stuff because it's the most subconscious you get when you're
that makes more sense to me that
from your subconscious. I don't know if I believe in like a divine meaning, like inherently or cosmically inherent symbolism, but
But I don't even think it's cosmic. I think it's just like cultural, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I lean towards believing that.
Yeah, I don't think
But-
there's anything spooky going on with this, but it's cool to like really see. It's like the shared subconscious or whatever, right? Or like, you know, shared consciousness of like we all exist together in a shared world, and so our dreams are connected.
Yeah. And the more we do this, the less I do tend to believe that any given dream is just a random set of images that we're projecting meaning onto. I do feel like it's most of the time they're meaningful in some way, shape, or form. Thanks for listening.
Follow us on social media at The Jung and the Restless Pod and submit your dreams for interpretation to thejungandtherestlesspod@gmail.com.
And as we always say,
You
can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find, no, you still can't get what you want.
Picked you a tiger lily on the moon, and maybe someday we could go there together. For now the clock is screaming, welcome home. Dream forever, dream forever.
Do you have a dream that you'd like read on an episode, but don't want us to dive into the deep, dark nooks and crannies of your psyche? Well, leave it in a review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll read it without trying to penetrate your soul with our keen gaze.
Long, hard, keen gaze.